Another week of isolation down. How you going? Hopefully you're coping. Obviously, one of the highlights of the week is that we all get together right now. We get to watch some excellent music and comedy here on Delivered Live. So it's pretty clear that regardless of this strange isolation that we find ourselves in, well, we all still love to be together and get together, to be entertained, to hang out and to have shared experiences. I reckon it's safe to say that we, as human beings, well, we've got an inherent desire to connect. But how do we connect with friends and family now that we can't actually physically connect with them? We can't touch them. We can't see them. They've got to, if they come past in the car, it's all about the window wind down. That's it. How do we celebrate milestones when we're in isolation, and why do we think it's important to do so? Well, today we're joined by a couple of folk who know a thing or two about getting together and having a good time and making memories. I've got comedian and my beautiful jungle buddy on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, Dilruk Jayasinha. Hi, Dilruk.
Hi, Myf. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. I've also got Digital and Communications Manager at 23 Sport and Entertainment, Melvis Crawford. Hello, Melvis.
Hi, Myf. How are you?
Good. And psychologist who is a regular guest on this little segment, Franco Greco. Hi, Franco.
Hi, Myf. How you going?
Yeah, excellent. Under the circumstances, obviously, under these isolation circumstances. Franco, we all whinge about having to go to Christmas and Easter and we feel stressed and sometimes overburdened by having to celebrate these milestones because they come at a difficult time of the year. But what's the importance of milestones for us as human beings? What do they help us with?
Well, milestones are really helpful because they create a sense of putting together a bit of a narrative about our life events. So if they're sort of loose life events, they don't really mean very much. But when they become milestones, they sort of connect to a bit of a story that we tell about ourselves, the story we tell about ourselves with our friends, our family, and they create a sense of meaning. So it's a sense of sense making for ourselves in terms of our lives. And they're associated with concepts around greater well-being, a sense of feeling more self-worth, feelings of more connectedness to other people. So milestones are a sense of setting achievements, but also sharing it with other people. So it sort of creates a sense of savouring positive moments.
Dilruk, you were always going to be doing the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which would have been one of those huge milestones for you, I'd imagine, in your career. Every year you do it. Every year you know it's coming up and you know what to expect to a certain degree. How do you feel now something like that has just been completely wiped out of the calendar?
It's challenging, to say the least, especially because you put so much effort into a brand new hour every year, and especially this particular show that I was performing in Adelaide and Brisbane and Perth before it got cancelled was about how much I enjoy being single and having a place to myself and not sharing my accommodation with anyone, and how I like to go and eat at restaurants by myself. It was a lot about bragging about how much I'm finally comfortable being in my own skin and being by myself, because I spent most of my 20s full of self-loathing and self-hate, that I was celebrating, oh my God, I actually do like me and I'm going to spend more time with myself. And God, am I spending some time with myself? I have. Even in the show though, I did specify that one of the reasons I do enjoy my solitude is because I spend every night with hundreds of people performing. So this was a relief. But when you take that element away, it's all I'm left with is myself, and it is challenging. But the idea of the comedy festival being taken away, it's quite fascinating, the timing of it, because for the last 2 years, I've spent a lot of effort and therapy on trying to disassociate my sense of self-worth from what I do. Because I love being a stand-up so much that I realized that it was getting to an unhealthy point, that if that was taken away from me, that I would not be able to find self-worth and purpose without that existing. So I'd been doing a lot of work on actually starting to treat it like a job and not who I am. And so much so that now this has been tested, because it's been like 5 or 6 weeks now since I had a gig, and it's the longest I've ever gone without that, dopamine hit, that validation from strangers that I crave on a nightly basis. So it's been basically it's putting all my work to the test, is how I look at it.
Yeah, I can imagine you'd feel very stretched at the moment. It's been a long time. How are you celebrating milestones, say, with like family? Because I know your situation's a bit different because your family are predominantly overseas, aren't they?
All of them. So I'm actually by myself here in Australia. So mum and dad are in Sri Lanka. My brother is married to an Indian, and he lives in India. And look, to be honest, as you know, in the jungle, when we spent those 2 weeks that I was there, one of my big things was about being grateful for things and making sure that I never lose sight of what I'm grateful for. And so things like technology and the existence of technologies like Zoom and phone video calls and stuff has been something I'm truly grateful for, because it's still not the best, of course, but knowing that I can still stay connected. Like, for example, 2 nights ago, I was doing a whole wardrobe overhaul, which I think is somewhere in the manual of isolation. At some point, you decide, I got to get rid of my wardrobe.
Mhm.
And in that process, I had mom and dad on a video camera, and I was literally like trying on outfits, saying, should I keep this or not? Like, that's something we wouldn't have done if lockdown didn't exist, because we were like, who has the time to just sit and watch their idiot son back in Melbourne trying to figure out whether a 2XL shirt is finally something he can let go of, you know? So because of this lockdown, we have nowhere to go. So in a weird way, I'm kind of grateful that we have that extra time to connect on something as bizarre as choosing which items go to charity and which ones stay in my wardrobe.
New milestones. Mum and dad help me with my wardrobe maybe once a year.
We cook.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Melvis, you work for a company that works on presenting some of the biggest sporting and entertainment events, and they're milestones for a lot of people who go along, things like racing, things like footy, things like huge festivals and concerts, all of that stuff are huge milestones for people. You would see how important they are for them. What do you think the importance of milestones is for the wider community?
Oh, we're noticing it a lot. What we're seeing is that people we're noticing they're remembering the events, and they're mourning the ones, like when, in your calendar, when it pops up like you're supposed to go to this gig tonight or see this sporting event, they're mourning it. So we're trying to remind them how much fun it was, seeing them go through it, and yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What about at home? You've got your gorgeous daughter, Casper, and of course, Henry, who we all know and love from this particular show, Delivered Live. How are you doing things like kids' birthdays with Casper? Because they're huge milestones for kids. They're the one thing that I remember. And as Franco said, it's really important for ideas of self-worth and understanding ritual and your role in the family. So what are you doing now with stuff like that?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're still celebrating milestones, still loving. In fact, we're probably celebrating more than ever. We make everything into a little milestone these days, just to kind of break up the monotony of the day. So what we're doing is with birthdays, we're making videos for people. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone, because we've got Casper making the video, which gives us spare time. And then the person at the other end whose birthday it is gets a nice little video from her. So we're doing that. We're doing a lot of FaceTiming. We're creating things like making bits of art, because we can't, you can't go visit people and give them presents. You make a bit of art, take a photo of it, send it through to them. Doing lots of FaceTime calls. We had a little Zoom party. I've actually got one tomorrow, Zoom birthday party, where everyone's making a particular cocktail and meeting at the same time on Zoom to celebrate. So we're just finding little different ways, little twists to adapt to the new normal, but still keeping it, making sure we're still connecting along the way.
That is perfect, a perfect way to do it. My nephew, Alfie, he had a Zoom birthday party, and they brought out the cake and everything, and they all watched a movie together on one of the streaming services. So there are ways. And do you think, say, using Casper as an example, do you think kids are worried about not having gatherings, or are they quite happy with the new normal?
She's adapting quite well to the new normal. We're getting her, she's quite excited. Do you know what? I think they like technology. So the fact they get to play on an iPad or something while talking to someone, and there's also filters you can use, so they can muck around. So she's not minding it at all. So, but maybe it might wear over time, but she's actually not, liking it a lot.
Yeah.
Is there an element that to the like how long they've had a conscious existence versus how long lockdown is, like that changes, it's like if half your life was spent in lockdown, you're like, oh, this is just the new norm. Like my brother's 5-month niece, she doesn't know any better. She's like, yeah, this is lovely. Whereas for us, we've had life outside and had more experiences that we keep comparing it to what life used to be like rather than being in the moment, to use a cliche.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think the novelty's still there at the moment.
Yeah.
It may wear, but yeah, they're not. She doesn't seem overly stressed by it, and she's quite excited. Like at night, we're getting grandparents to FaceTime in and read her a bedtime story. So little things like that, and she's actually spending more time with some grandparents who she normally wouldn't because they live far away. So there are the pluses and minuses. Sometimes she'll say, I want to give them a hug, so that's a bit tough, but we're finding other ways around it. We're engaging more, doing more videos of her, sending them around. We're trying to find little workarounds for this new normal.
Franco, ritual and traditions and marking anniversaries and that kind of thing, we've engaged in this sort of caper since the beginning of time. Is it because they provide us with some sort of structure in what is always an unpredictable world? And does that mean it's more important now simply because everything is completely upended?
Yeah, I think the point that you raised is about we've always been telling this story about ourselves, and we always relied on events and stories and milestones and rituals to tell stories. So we are a story maker. Like our brain is geared to create stories, and sometimes those stories aren't real. Sometimes they are real. And I think it's really important what Melvis was saying earlier as well, and is about we're actually creating a story right now. And we're creating rituals right now, and there's reasons why we're doing that, because actually they're important to us. And I was just listening to that story, the way people have been talking about it, and it just really does indicate that really individuals in society, the way we connect to, even the way we're talking about this stuff, is a ritual in itself. So it's a story that's happening within the story all the time.
That's a fabulous way of looking at it. I love that. Have any of you got any birthdays or anniversaries coming up? And what are you going to do? Dilruk, you got anything, or Melvis?
Henry's birthday's coming up. I've been planning. I've noticed there's a lot of restaurants who back in the day you couldn't even, ring up and book your seat. You had to kind of wait out front in the freezing cold, but now they're doing delivery. So I think I'm going to order like a nice meal from a really nice restaurant and get some cocktails delivered. I know some people love to cook for birthdays and anniversaries. I try to make my life very easy. So I think I'm just going to get some really nice food brought in, drinks, put on some good music, maybe stream something. Yeah, that's how I think we'll celebrate that one. And, leave and just know that this year, hopefully, is just like a one-off odd year. We can look back and go, remember when we did that for that particular year? Yeah.
My only tip, Melvis, is because I had my birthday back in Jan when there wasn't a lockdown, and I did something I'd never done before, and I tried to get many more people to do it, which was I couldn't decide which restaurant I wanted to go eat at because I had like the whole day to myself. So what I did was I went to 4 different restaurants and had 4 separate meals in each place, and told my mates, okay, between 12 to 12:45, I'm going to be at this restaurant, and the next place I'm going to be. And I had different mates join me in because they obviously couldn't keep up with my 3-hour lunch schedule. And it meant that I got everything I wanted that day. So now that you have the delivery option, rather than choosing the one restaurant, get an entree from one of the favorite restaurants, get a dessert from another one.
Is genius. I was selling myself short. That is a plan. I'm going 10 courses.
Cost, but it's worth it because it's a special birthday. It's a birthday.
Well, do you know what? Also, I've noticed we're kind of saving money in a way. I mean, although a lot of our incomes have been impacted, but as I was thinking, what would I have normally spent on a birthday? And also, I'm not really ordering gifts online because they're just taking too long to get here. So I'm more about experiences.
Yeah.
And just trying to break up the monotony of it. So I'm loving that idea of ordering many meals. And also in my mind, I'm also thinking I'm keeping local businesses, I'm helping them out. So I feel good about myself while doing it.
Yeah, you're spreading the love,
10 dishes arriving. Done. I love it.
That's brilliant. It's like a progressive dinner in the 1970s, when people used to go to different people's houses, but we're doing it in a different way. I love it.
I do Franco, my own home degustation where I pick like 8 different places and have. The problem is you got to time the delivery.
Yes.
Because sometimes I've gotten dessert when I haven't got my second main yet, and I'm like, you have to stay outside and you can't bring that in just yet.
I love it.
Franco, do you think we're going to make new rituals and mark anniversaries and things like that in a different way after all of this? Do you think this is going to have a big impact on how we interact as human beings and perhaps scale down the enormity of it or the outsideness of it and really bring it back to a more kind of, I guess, a community level or family level?
Well, I think we will, and I think just the commentary, just by what the guys have been saying so far, is actually we'll remember this time. And when people say that, that itself is a story that we're going to be saying in years. And we'll remember that time when we experienced this. Like I said, it's a natural thing for us to create those rituals, and we're creating them right this moment. One of the things I think was really important, is actually a lot of my birthdays in our family actually towards the end of the year. And actually planning ahead and to actually thinking about events in the future as well. So actually, how are we going to do that when we can actually get together? A social event actually is quite positive as well. So I actually think also thinking about it in this way, think about also how you can plan ahead as well.
What are you all going to do? What's the first thing you're going to do when isolation is?
Yeah, well, we're Italian. We're Italian background, so it's going to be a lot of food, and there'll be a lot of competition of food as well.
What about you, Dilruk? What are you most looking forward to when this is over?
Look, I might go to my local cafe and just hug the owner because I haven't had, physical contact for like 5 weeks. He's the closest person I can think of I can maybe go and grab. But yeah, I thought about that actually, what I would do. And if by a snap of the fingers that, it just happens overnight and they say everything's back to normal, I think the first thing I would do is I would fly to Sri Lanka and be with mom and dad. It was this really bizarre thing where I used to go 3 times a year. And that knowledge that I could go was something that helped this last 16 years in Australia by myself manageable, that was an option. And having that option taken away has made this extra challenging. And it's I'm using this time to answer some pretty important questions, such as, was it worth it? Everything that I've done that has led up to this moment, was it worth it? And luckily for me, the answer is yes, because I've really being able to even take time back and take a step back and think about those bigger questions like that have been really useful. And it's interesting, we keep talking about this idea of story and what stories mean to humans. And I've been using that very idea of looking at this as this story and how we'll be told from my perspective, years down the track. And my friend Nico used the analogy of a biographer asking you, also, what did you do during the great lockdown of 2020? And for him, it was anxiety driven, where he was like, he wanted to make sure he wrote a book or something that he made use of that time. And for me, I was excited to say, I spent that time just being, because it's something I didn't get to do. Like, I went from one project to the other, whether it's radio, TV, podcasting, stand-up, it was back, always. I'd not really had a holiday. And I used this time finally just sit on the couch and listen to music. I've been going through the Billboard 100 from 1993 to 90. I'm up to 97, and just going through each song, going, "Oh my God, that's right! Keith Sweat. I forgot about him." And things like that have been such a weird gift in a really awful use of the word gift, is just being able to be. And that's something that I think my story, I'm excited to tell people. What did you do? Nothing. I just sat on a couch and listened to Blessed Union of Soul.
Oh, beautiful. But also that's a really good thing to do, that's not a bad thing to do. We live in such a productive culture that sometimes I think we forget that reflection and trying to come to some understanding of who we are, we lose that in living in. So that, for me, that's a great thing to come out of this.
Right. And I think exactly, if you are able to create and add more quality to the world, sure, go for it. But if you don't want to do that, that's okay too. It's almost like everyone should take this time and use it to their best, what they really need to do with it. And that story, the idea of, fast forwarding to the future and looking back, and what's the story you want to tell your 80-year-old self on a rocking chair as you're thinking back to this time. That's what I sort of push my head back to forward, going, oh yeah, I just sat and did nothing. How cool.
Melvis, what's the first thing you're going to do when this is all over?
Okay, it would be, I think, obviously see friends, just do a normal night. What was a normal night a couple of months ago? Dinner, friends, go see live music, have a couple of drinks, lots of laughs, just basics. Yeah, stuff like that. I'd love to do that again. Can't wait.
Do you reckon time in isolation prepared time in the jungle prepared you for isolation? Because I feel like it did.
I get asked that a lot about experience in the jungle and that isolation, and has it prepared me? And the truth is yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it showed me how much more resilience I have and the ability to adapt. So it gave me that confidence as we went in, like, as tough as this is, I will adapt eventually. Because you remember how by like the first week we started to really get into the groove of things. But no, because in that particular instance, we had an end point. We had a very clear, this is going to be done in 30 days. So just tolerate it for 30 days. Whereas with this current situation, the unknown uncertainty of when this all changes or goes back to normal, or even if it will, is something that is sort of really kind of, you know, anxiety driven. And also the other big one is we had each other, like physically had each other. There's like highlights footage of me just hugging different people at different points. You know what I mean? I haven't been able to do that. You know what I mean? So I would say yes and no. But I don't know, have you found the same experience?
Yeah, totally. I just think it really pushed me to be comfortable with going slower. And that's been something that's happened. I mean, at least initially, I think everyone's just ramping up, getting busier now because of work and all of that sort of stuff.
I have one question for you though. Remember some of the things we said when we go back into the real world? I can't wait to do this, and this, and or do less of this. So for me, for example, I was going to use less of my phone because I got so addicted to it and I had this time off it. I reckon that lasted 2 hours for me. So have you had any things like that where you thought, okay, I'm going to do this, and then you didn't end up doing any of it?
I reckon that was one of them. Although I must admit, I'm consuming a lot less news. I'm consuming a lot less kind of social media, that sort of stuff. I think that's good. I think that's a good side of it. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, everyone. It's been really enlightening and lovely to hear your experiences as we all go through this together. None of us know what this is supposed to be like. So I think having these conversations really helps in all of us understanding our own experiences and what we're going through. So I thank you all so very much.
Thank you for having me.